Hello,
Hello.
hello, everybody. Good to see you. So tonight we're here with, Kate and me, and we're going to have this series of the Dark Night of the
Uh-oh.
Soul.
Do you have
Kate,
one of your things open? Because I hear an echo.
oh, you do? I
Mhm.
don't. Oh, that sucks. I don't. So wait, let me. I'm
Hold on.
back.
Hold on 1 second. It's on my end,
Yeah.
but I don't know where. Because I don't know. Oh, I do have a thing open. Sorry.
Okay. Anyway, good to see you all. Great start. Good to see you, Sanaya. I know you. Kara, good to see you. Also up three. And Montrose, good to see you all. Actually, I did have my chat open here in Rumble as well. And on Pilled. I know it's a
We're
mess.
live in like 97 places, so we've got all kinds of things going on right now.
Yeah, that's going great so far. But anyway, yes, so we're going to be here every Wednesday with the Dark Night of the Soul. And yeah, it's going to be exciting. I think it's a great topic that's dear to our hearts. And yeah, um, hey Molly, good to see you by the way, and Nancy. So yeah, you will. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. So, first off, will you guys let us know? We're not sure if our audio is equal. So, if one of us is louder than the other, will you please let us know?
Yes.
Um, so, one of the things that I wanted to start off with is, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, but really where the term the dark night of the soul comes from. Because I remember, I had gone through my experience, didn't have a name for it or anything. And then I started hearing this thing about this thing called the dark night of the soul. So, which sounds, I mean, it's such an intriguing name. And then I started to find out kind of what it was. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think that's where I came, where what I went through. So where it came from is this guy named, oh no, oops, hold on.
Great timing.
Yeah, oh, so we'll get into that in a second, but I wanted to share this quote. The darker the night, the brighter the stars, the deeper the grief, the closer is God. And I believe that comes from Crime and Punishment, but that is just that quote really encapsulates to me what the Dark Night of the Soul is about. And it's a dark topic, right? We're going to be talking about some pretty sad things, but at the same time, the whole message of this is that I think you start to find out that not only are these processes necessary, but they ultimately are for your greatest benefit. And so that's really the takeaway of this. Although we'll laugh, we'll cry, we're going to get into our stories, me and Patricia. We're also going to have other people on to talk about their experiences with this as well. Because once you started talking about this, we both got bombarded with other people that had their same stories.
Yes. Yes, we did talk about it as well a lot, I think, in the call that we did,
Yes.
which was just audio. And we might bring it back in the future again without camera, which is so much easier. Good to see you, QEgg. But yeah, Dark Night of the Soul. So I have a piece as well that I wanted to cover about what is the Dark Night of the Soul. It's an intense, often painful period of deep spiritual, emotional, and existential crisis. It feels like being completely lost, disconnected from purpose, meaning, and sometimes even yourself. It's as if everything that once gave you a sense of identity, security, or belief crumbles, leaving you in a void of uncertainty. Unlike regular sadness and depression, the dark night of the soul isn't just emotional suffering. It's a profound transformation which strips away illusions, forcing you to confront your deepest fears, doubts, and wounds. This process can be agonizing, but it often leads to a rebirth, a new understanding of self, life, and spirituality. So it's the spiritual equivalent of an ego death, where old beliefs, attachments, and ways of being are burned away. So sometimes more yeah, authenticity can emerge. Many who go through it describe it as a painful but necessary awakening, breaking down before a breakthrough. So then what's the purpose of these cycles? That is to force a surrender, to reveal a deeper truth within yourself, and also to align you with authenticity, and to prepare you for greater insight and service. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. I certainly am.
With what?
Well, with all of the above. So there's the ego death. There is it's actually not a straight line either. It's like it comes in waves, right?
Mhm.
So the loss of purpose and identity for me is very much recognizable. Yeah, I definitely went through that, but then
Yeah.
again, who hasn't?
Well, for sure. And I that's, it's a good point because who hasn't been through a hard time? Who hasn't felt depressed or sad or a disconnect with who they are or whatever? And so, how do you tell the difference between, I mean, life is hard. We all go through hard things and it has an impact on the way that we feel and the way that we behave. So, what is the difference between just something normal, hard that you're going through and an actual dark night of the soul, which is what, we are going to talk about. Do you want me to go in kind of to the stuff that I have, like the
Yeah.
origins of it and everything? Okay, so like I said, this is a poem that kind of, this is where the term came from. And this guy, his name was John of the Cross. He was a 16th century Spanish mystic and a friar. And so he had this poem, but then he also had some subsequent writings on this topic. So I'll read this poem. In a dark night, with anxious love inflamed, oh happy lot, forth unobserved I went, my house being now at rest. In darkness and in safety, by the secret ladder disguised, oh happy lot, in darkness and concealment, my house being now at rest. In that happy night, in secret, seen of none, seeing not myself, without other light or guide, save that is that which in my heart was burning. That light guided me more surely than the noonday sun to the place where he was waiting for me, whom I know well and where none appeared. O guiding night, O night more lovely than the dawn, O night that hast united the lover with his beloved and changed her into her love. On my flowery bosom, kept whole for him alone, there he reposed and slept, and I cherished him, and the waving of cedars fanned him, and his hair floated in the breeze that from the turret blew. He struck me on the neck with his gentle hand, and all sensation left me. I continued in oblivion lost. My head was resting on my love, lost to all things and myself, and amid the lilies forgotten, threw all my cares away. So, I mean, that really kind of has more of like an uplifting kind of, sounds like almost like a love story. This guy leaves his house and he's carried on the night, and, he's not seen by anybody in the dark of night, and he sees nothing else in the dark of night. And it talks about how his house is at rest. Well, really what that is that's the old self. That's the ego that is kind of separated, and you're on this spiritual journey on your own. So, it describes basically the soul's journey through deep spiritual suffering, even though it seems like a very kind of nice, pleasant love story. But really that darkness is a representation of, being absent, or when God feels absent from us, that darkness, that aloneness, and not feeling seen, not seeing the world yourself. And then everything familiar falls away. So that's like leaving the house. So this dark night is not a punishment. It's a sacred process of purification. By leaving the ego behind, and also attachments and illusions, the soul moves forward towards a profound union with the divine, ultimately finding peace, love, and transformation on the other side of darkness. When you're going through it, it does not feel like there's anything beneficial for you. And, because we have that ego that tells us, I mean, okay, I can learn the lesson. Just tell me the lesson. Like, why do I have to suffer? Why do I have to go through such heartbreak? Why do I have to go through such darkness? Or, if I am going through it, why does it have to last for, can it just be a couple of days and then I learn my lesson and I move on? But only God knows what it is going to take to really teach you the lesson and really get you, anything that is establishing growth is quite a violent act. Like if you think of a seed and you plant that seed in the ground, I mean, for the seed, like we are looking at it from our perspective, and it just seems like the plant starts to grow. But if you are that seed, I mean, you're being cracked open and you're having things like your guts are being spilled out. That's a very violent act. But without that cracking, the plant could never emerge. So that process, it can last however long it's going to last. And also, like Patricia, you touched on, it doesn't necessarily happen one time in your life. Like the ego can crack. You can, move to a more enlightened, closer to God kind of place. And then guess what? The rug gets pulled out from under you again, and you go through it again.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely, gosh, I've been through it like for the past 20 years. Well, I guess before as well, but I think we are now more aware of it because it's so freaking brutal.
Yeah.
And I'm laughing now, but I didn't laugh at the time when it happened.
Yeah, exactly. But that's so important, right? Because
Right. Yeah. It's it's exactly unarmed patriot. It takes a lot of time to realize that some sufferings were a gift. I mean, I tell you, I've been crawling over the floor, panic attacks, crying, thinking, what the heck am I still doing here? I don't understand it. And but it comes and goes in waves. Every time a little piece of your ego just snaps off and you're being reborn, and and you just go, and then you think, oh yeah, great, I'm through it.
right.
Only to get again. It's actually, we should have put that clip in from the ego death, where this guy is falling off a cliff and then he keeps rolling and rolling, and then he holds on to the last vestiges of life, which is actually roots that come from the ground, and he holds on, but then even there it snaps off and he just keeps rolling and rolling, and then at the end of the years, what on earth was that? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is what it feels like once you get your footing, and you're like, glad that was over. Actually, I'm actually kind of glad when I went through my first one, I was learning about it. I was researching it. I hadn't heard yet that you could go through multiple. And I was a little bit grateful for that, because had I known, this could happen again, I don't think I was strong enough. But then once it came again, and then again, I was like, okay. And you do become a little bit more equipped, although every fall is still painful. And now, it does help to, number one, know what it is, understand that, like Patricia said, we can sit here and laugh about it now, because when you're going through it, you can't even fathom that you'll ever laugh again, let alone at this awful thing that you're going through. And then
that reminds me of when we had our New Year's. I had my New Year's Eve celebrations. Remember, it started in 2020 to 2021, and we were all like, holy crap, that was our year. That was so bad. I'm sure 2022 or 2021 is going to be perfect, right? Then 2022 came. Holy moly, even worse. And then 2023 came, even worse. And each time it's almost like you build up to, like, it starts kind of mellow, even though it doesn't feel mellow the first time, but then you think, oh, it can't get worse than this, but it can actually. But it's almost like you are trained to get a step up to the suffering, I want to say, because there's a lot. I don't even know, the process is kind of divine, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get stronger each time, so your challenges get bigger each time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, my mom always used to say, she used to use Paris Hilton as an example, because this was, a long time ago that she said this to me. But, somebody like Paris Hilton, and she might be a bad example because I really don't know anything about her life, but on the surface at that time, she's this wealthy girl, she's a partier. What worries, what concerns does she have? But my mom was saying her pains, like, that we feel like, we look at her life and we think, oh, if I could just step into that life, wouldn't things be so grand? And I would never have anything to complain about, and I would never feel pain, and I would always be happy, and nothing would ever bother me. But your pain and suffering meets you where you are. And even though we can look at other people's lives and we can compare our situation to theirs, we really can't compare, because though somebody's plights might seem a lot easier, they are just as hard to them because that's what they are ready for.
Well, yeah, and it's their life. So everybody has their own, in their own life, there's suffering, right? Even if somebody has been born rich and famous and all that, the suffering may come from a complete different side than
Mhm.
we might have, right? Suffering is suffering. You really, no money can pay off for the suffering you have, right?
No. Well, I mean, and in the same way, a baby, like when a baby is growing up, when a baby is little and you take away their pacifier or, these things, they cry and they're, tortured and they're upset, whatever. And then as they get older, you take the toy away from the kids, same thing, they have a meltdown, whatever. And as you get older, it's not that you're suppressing those feelings of having your toy taken away. It's that they don't bother you anymore because now you have a different perspective on life. You're more prepared for things. Your challenges get bigger. So it is a spiritual growth, just like being a baby and growing into adulthood.
Yeah, I just wonder, because obviously we all grow up with maybe traumas and whatnot. What comes on your path, and for one, it's maybe it's different than for another, but also worse than for another. I do believe that everybody can carry what they came in for, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Because to me, I mean, I know I had a lot of sufferings, but then I can see somebody else who had a lot more sufferings than me. But then I'm like, well, maybe that was meant to be for that person to learn certain things in this life.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and for me it was different. But I can also understand that for some, what for me is like relative suffering can be way worse for somebody else. It's all, everything is in balance to what we are individually used to, I want to say, almost.
Yeah.
But it's quite divine, I have to say. So do you want to go into your experience?
Well, I wanted to talk just a little bit more about some of the background because obviously it started with that poem and some more of the writings, but then it's a concept that's been picked up by, many of the world's greatest thinkers, whether they're spiritual, religious, or not. And Carl Jung, which I mean, a lot of people know that I love him. And, I've done shows on him before. I really think he was brilliant and had a lot of a lot of the things that he talked about helped me lead my life, I guess. And he talked about this thing called the night sea journey. So he didn't call it the dark night of the soul per se, but that was kind of this mythological motif representing a descent into darkness, chaos, and the unconscious. So this mirrors the Dark Knight as a necessary confrontation with the shadow, which is something that he talked about a lot, where one loses a sense of identity, direction, or meaning, but ultimately returns transformed. So he said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Uh,
Wow.
it was also the individuation and the death of the ego. He was big on ego. This was a process of becoming one's true self, and it requires going through a psychic breakdown of the ego. This process often involves deep suffering, confusion, and the collapse of one's previous worldview, much like St. John's description in the spiritual desolation. In each of us, there is another whom we do not know. He speaks to us in dreams and tells us how differently he sees us. And
Wow.
then also, he viewed these psychological crises not as pathology, but as calls to transformation. He believed that when the ego is stripped bare, the self, or the deeper divine aspect of the psyche, begins to emerge. Again, echoing, basically what was said in the poem. Eckhart Tolle, whether people like him or not, he's got some really great books. He had some interesting things to say. A lot of what he talked about was kind of taken from the things that came prior to him, but he was also a brilliant guy. And he talked a lot about the ego and ego death as
Yes.
well. Um,
It's
he said,
actually one of my favorite lectures that he's done on the ego, and that is so profound. It's actually
yeah,
quite funny too, because he's very funny about it.
yeah.
But that one, I always kept it in the back of my head when I was in a crisis, and I would watch it over and over again just to get the message. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and you can find that too online. He said, the ego dies, but it doesn't go quietly. Ain't that the truth? So he views the dark night as the ego's resistance to its own dissolution. I mean, it's trying to preserve itself. And this is self-preservation. And it's like, no, no, you can't go on without me. And that's part of the pain and the suffering. You know, the everything in the subconscious is registered as either pain or pleasure. And it has to do with what is familiar versus what is unfamiliar. And anything that is familiar, even if it's holding you back, even if it's actually painful, even if it's very bad for you and you know it, if it is familiar to you, your ego is going to cling to that. Your subconscious is going to cling to that. And then if you try to change anything about yourself, that is torture for the subconscious. It is literally registered as pain. It's a kind of death, but nothing real has actually died, only a false sense of self. And then there was another author, Thomas More, who was also a former monk, I believe. And he would argue actually that the modern culture pathologizes sadness and confusion, trying to fix or escape them, when in fact, they may be invitations to depth. He said the soul presents itself in the darkness, in depression, in loss, in yearning. That's where the soul lives. So unlike Tolle, who frames the dark night of the soul as a spiritual awakening, basically like transcending the ego, More emphasized that the soul over the spirit. So basically the soul and the spirit are two different things. The spirit is what seeks light, transcendence and clarity. And then the soul is the part of you that embraces shadow, ambiguity, emotion, and earthly reality. So you have these two sides of yourself. Again, going back to Carl Jung and the shadow side, which is, something that you not shove down. That's actually how the shadow side gets created, but to embrace it, to work with the shadow side.
Right.
So anyway, so rather than seeking immediate healing or breakthrough, More encourages us to befriend the darkness, to linger with melancholy, confusion, or loss. These are where the soul grows roots. Sometimes the soul needs time in darkness to find its way back to light. And that kind of goes into the whole duality thing. If there was no such thing as darkness, there would be no such thing as light. If there was no such thing as suffering, we wouldn't even have the word happiness, because that we would never know. And there would also be no growth.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that you said. And I do actually love Eckhart Tolle a lot. Yeah, I don't even know why people wouldn't like it, to be honest. But because, he has so many wise lectures surrounding this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a good one. But it's interesting to me because it's a concept that crosses the boundaries between different spiritualities, different religions, and they all kind of share it in common, because I think it's something that so many people experience and go through. You kind of can't deny that there's something there. And then especially once you're on the other end of it and you have that perspective of actually what it was for. Because like I said, when you're going through it, you're just like, I'm being punished. God hates me. I'm forgotten.
Yeah.
All the things.
Well, actually, Inquisitive Quiston, who says in the chat, "Hi, Patricia Kate, long time no see. AA's phrase, ego is edging God out." And I love that, because I've been in rehab. Addicts, as addicts or addictions, in general, they definitely pull you back to a giant rebirth. That is, if you go for it, right? If not, then you're still stuck with it. But once you go through that whole phase of getting rid of an addiction, then you definitely go through a dark night of the soul.
I would
And
imagine, yeah.
it's brutal, but it's also a choice, and there you need to be way firmer with, well, I guess you have to be firm with everything. It's just that with addiction, at least you have a clear, you kind of clearly know what's going on, in the sense that you know that you're using stuff or whatnot that is bad for you, and then you need to search for the root of it. Whereas with other crises that we have, with the dark night of the soul, usually they are very confusing, because you have no clue what's going on. You might be in a depression or feeling really stagnant. You don't know what's going on until you figure it out, and it's a really difficult puzzle, to be honest. Or actually, that was here as well. What can trigger a dark night of the soul is, broken relationships, or jobs that end, or, during COVID, how many people lost their jobs and they had to invent something for themselves again new. But I think, everything was in divine timing and was meant to be that way in order for you to evolve again in your life.
Yeah, because your identity is wrapped up in those relationships and your job sometimes, if your whole life is being in this relationship and, I'm a this career, whatever, then when you lose those things, it can start to fracture that ego that you kind of cling to. If we think of ego as kind of a protective shell around us, and it can, it can expand, but it's got to crack first. And
Right.
so it's not a pleasant thing to go through. Um, I guess I
Right.
can kind of like start getting into my story if you want. We were kind of saying maybe I would tell my story this episode. Patricia will tell her experience next episode. And then we're going to start bringing on guests so that, other
Right.
people can talk about theirs as well. I think a lot of people at this point know my awakening experience as far as it was very rapid. I went from being completely just asleep and plugged into the matrix and operating. I was a mom and whatever, but I wasn't living for any purpose. I had no connection really to anything other than my son. And then I was just kind of like living day to day and whatever. And so when I went down a couple rabbit holes, and this was in early 2018, one of them was, can we say on YouTube pizza, whatever? Or is
Yeah.
that still an issue? We can say Pizzagate? Okay. Once upon a time, we didn't. We used to have to say we had to come up with different phrases.
Yeah.
So I went down that rabbit hole and it broke me. It broke me because of what I was able to find, what I was able to see, what I saw through in that moment. And I remember being like, I really thinking to myself, I don't know how I'm going to function in the world again with what I know. I can't chit chat with people. There's no having small talk. There's no I can't go back to the life that I had because nothing else matters other than this. And for those of you that don't know, I'm sure everybody does, but it has to do with children and the horrific things that happen to children in our world.
Yeah.
Really, that's what it comes down to the most, is that these things do happen, whether or not you believe in that theory or whatever. We know for a fact that these things happen. Hang on just one second. Yeah, okay, thanks. So that, and I knew that, but it was just like it all became very real to me. And I remember having these nightmares afterward about my son, because my son was 2 at the time, and I started having these nightmares, and I'm not even going to say what they were because they'll sound really stupid. But on the surface of it, it was like I couldn't get to him. I couldn't protect him. And
Mm.
they were the most haunting, realistic dreams. And I kind of realized later that it wasn't so much about even protecting my son. I've always been a helicopter mother. I've always been, right there. I mean, even still to this day, my son is 10 years old. And I'm like, he's not out of my sight. But luckily, he still likes that. He likes to show me off and stuff like that. He's still just a little cookie. I understand it won't be like that forever. But I am
Yeah.
super duper protective of him. So, and I was even before this. But I think those dreams actually came from, sorry, I think they came from me realize like the feeling of I can't protect other kids, about all the
Yeah.
kids I can't protect. I don't have any control over this happening in the world. And that was that spiritual breakdown. Like I don't, my identity, I guess, as a mother, it was like, what kind of a mother am I if this happens in the world and I don't do anything about it, and I don't there's nothing I can do. And I think I had a lot of guilt at that time too, because I had obviously heard about that for many years, or a year, whatever it was. I don't even remember timelines, but I had heard it was debunked and I never even bothered to look into it. So once I finally did, I had a lot of guilt that I had just dismissed it for so long. And luckily at that time, I found other things that gave me hope. I found the Q operation like almost immediately. I started looking for people on Twitter and in other spaces that were talking about this thing that gave me hope. And really, that was what I clung to. It was like, okay, yes, I know the world is dark now, but there are two things. I also know that there's hope. And I also, because I now believe in true evil, I also, by logic, believe in God and believe that there's also
Right.
pure goodness out there. So that was the first time in my life I ever felt that way, because I was not religious. I was not spiritual. I never really, I mean, I've always believed in God, but there wasn't like a personal connection there. It was just like, if somebody would have asked me, do you believe in God? I would have said, yeah, but it wasn't like there was no tangible anything to that.
I just
So
I just want to say that that specific topic was that was a mass awakening, I guess, for so many people all at once. Because in the chat, a lot of people saying I went through that too. I went through that too. I had people going in a complete panic when your whole paradigm is just shifting when you realize what's going on. And I went through that rabbit hole, obviously, and yeah, it was so confronting, but I do think that because so many went through it, we all had support on each other.
mm,
Whereas, when you have like another, like other Dark Night of the Soul, it's not like this was a very exceptional one where we went as a collective through it. And as a collective, I don't mean even the whole world, but everybody that found those, truths regarding the whole Pizzagate went through it. And I don't think it was a coincidence that it was such a collective of people that went through it, because that way we could also find support with each other.
yeah. Yeah, but I mean, not everyone, though. Not everyone finds a community right away. Not everyone
Sure.
has some. I think a lot of people are going back to church, but I've also had a lot of friends who did the whole church thing, trying to reconnect and trying to find a tribe of people to help them through this, and finding that in their personal experiences, some of them, the church was falling flat as far as kind of talking about it and not being about it, or they didn't really feel. So I feel for those people, because it's a very hard thing to go through alone. When nobody
Yeah.
seems to understand you, you think you're going crazy, and it's scary, it hurts, all of the things. For me, one of the interesting things that happened to me, uh, there were several iterations of this, right? And so the first one was pretty rapid because, like I said, I found that hope very quickly. And it was like I was just being propelled from the back. It was like I was being pushed from the back, and all these things were lining up for me. And I started to connect with people, and I started to talk about my experience. And it was just like, wow, glad that's over. And I really felt called to be doing what I was doing. I felt right. I felt like I found my mission. And that was a really wonderful time. And then things started to kind of get weird. I went through something in my personal life where, when you go through this, and even when times are good, this stuff makes you very vulnerable because you want so badly to find your people. And at the time, I had somebody in my life who I thought was my best friend, and they knew all of these things. And we were able to talk about all that spiritual stuff, and they got me, and they didn't think I was crazy, and, whatever. And then something just wild ended up happening with that relationship. And everything spiraled from there, because it wasn't even just like a normal, like, okay, we're not friends anymore. I had all these people in my life that it was almost like something else was taking over their body. And all these people that I
Right.
had surrounding me that I trusted and I had grown to trust, or maybe I trusted forever, all of a sudden something else was just taking over their body, and they were treating me like horribly all of a sudden. And it was like, can I have anybody? And then on top of the fact that I had been through, I put myself out there online. I got a lot of flack. I got a lot of, you know, harsh words and even threats from people because I was openly supporting Trump, or because I was openly talking about conspiracy theories or spirituality or whatever it was. Like, even in the spirituality world, I got a lot of crap from people who had different religious beliefs, even though I've never said like, okay, I've got the answers or this is what it is. I've never tried to sway anybody else's beliefs, but it was like everywhere I went, I kind of didn't fit in anywhere because everyone always just had their opinions. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So, anyway, went through that. That was a big spiral for me of the second dark night of the soul for me. And it's such a wild story that if I wrote it as a book, nobody, I mean, you remember it, you were there during that time, most of it. It was an insane story, but really at the crux of it, it was me standing alone in this darkness, trying to put the pieces of my life back together. And when I had nothing to cling to, really. And at that time, for me, and this, I know this does not happen to everyone, but for me, I also became very, I guess I was like a magnet for really weird stuff, like paranormal activity, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
I had a million different experiences with things that I was seeing in my house, outside my house, things that were touching me, things were whispering in my ears. Like, I literally thought I was going crazy, but thank God I at least had some people who had their own experiences like this, understood it, knew I wasn't crazy. I did have some people like my mom, for example, she's never had an experience like that. Well, she's had some weird things, but never on this level. She's like, I don't, know personally what you're talking about, but I know you and I believe you. And that was everything to me, because it was like, there's something so crazy about.
I found that interesting because we kind of always went in the same way, but one was always behind or in front of the other, which was great because in that way,
Yeah.
as soon as one just broke down, the next one, you or me, could, support the other. I remember me just sobbing and crying in the phone with you, but other way around as well. But it was always it was never simultaneously, but it was kind of, when one was down, the other one could, be there for support. And that was a nice synchronistic thing that happened, I remember, because, yeah, when you went through that one, I was there as well. And you had your breakdowns, obviously, only for me to have a breakdown down next, and but it's interesting over the years how we've been like parallel to each other, going like, like that.
Yes. Yeah, you really start to see more kind of how the relationships in your life are woven in at the correct times and how you really need them. I literally don't know how I would have gotten through this without people like you. And I only
Yeah.
had, a small collection of these people that I could trust. But
Right.
it's another reason why I talk about this as much as I do, is because I do know that there are people out there that don't have that. And so to even just hear somebody talk about it and say like, okay, I'm not alone in this,
Right.
can be
Yeah,
everything.
we tend to also isolate ourselves when we are in a crisis like that, and also thinking that we're alone, whereas many often we're actually not. But it's, I guess that it's a loneliness from within that actually pulls you to, thinking that we're alone in it.
Mm.
But really, if you go look around, you find always people that are there to support you and to catch you when you fall, right? I mean, yeah, there were moments that I went through it completely alone, thinking, I can't do this anymore, only for the next moment having somebody catching me when I was falling, and right on time, I have to say. And I believe the same happened with you, right? Because I do think there's a portion of this where we do have to go through it by ourselves for some reason. But yeah.
You know that you've one of the things that becomes very clear, I think, is that you realize how alone you actually are in the world. Like, even if you have support, even if you have friends, even if you have family members who love you, and you still really realize like, okay, it's nice. They can say things, they can help me in some ways, but I really am alone here. And it really is up to me to get through this and survive it.
Yeah,
So
you're still with your own thoughts and you still go to bed alone. You're not constantly online, but the moments that you are with yourself, you are going through it like brutally, um, to say the least.
yeah, I mean, it's very brutal. And it's not the people that you would expect, really. I mean, and sometimes that's one of the hardest pills to swallow, because the people that you would expect to have your back and be there for you, who you think love you and support you unconditionally,
Yeah.
just disappear. And sometimes they don't just disappear, they explode in your face. Because this is the
Yes.
other thing. When you're going through this, it triggers the people around you. Because, like I said, that anything changing, anything being disruptive to the system of what everyone is already used to, is like warning, warning, warning to the people around you. So they don't, it's really important to remember, when you are having an awakening experience, the people in your life, they don't think that's wonderful. They see it as a threat. And that's why we
Yes.
have a hard time red pilling, or, enlightening, awakening our loved ones.
Yeah, and it feels like being stabbed in the back, which kind of is, but at the same time, later on down the line, because I had the exact same thing at my lowest moment, is when I had people actually letting me, leaving my life, and brutally so. And I thought, really? On top of everything that's already happening.
Right.
But later on I thought, this is exact actually it was you that said to me, one day when you die and you're on the other side, you all give yourselves high fives. Like, I was there just to, if you believe in reincarnation, doesn't matter really. But
Or even heaven. Even
it
heaven.
helped me a lot, because I could all of a sudden I could see a different perspective, as in, oh, right. So these people are here maybe so that I am by myself with it for this moment, and that I have to go through it. And at the end of the day, if I think back at these people now, would I want them in my life right now? No, no, I couldn't even. Yeah, I wouldn't even vibe with them anymore, regardless of what happened. But um, they wouldn't fit in my life today anymore as I thought at the time they were, you
Yeah.
know?
All the things that are not actually meant for you will fall away. And that is
Yes.
really uncomfortable, because you're used to what you're used to, and you feel like these things are forever, and you think that they're never going to change, and you think, oh, I found wonderful people who love and support me. And then all of a sudden they turn into, I mean, Charles Manson. Like, they just, it's really bizarre. I mean, we were all talking about this too. We could not believe it. Like, what was happening? Like, this person that's super loving and docile and gentle, all of a sudden is jumping down your throat for something. And you're just like, but it also teaches you from that perspective. I
Right.
might have been a lot quicker before my experience to, be rude to somebody, or really diminish what it is that they're going through that I don't see on the surface. But now I'm a lot more careful. I'm a lot more gentle than I used to be,
Right.
because I know what that's like now.
Right. And also, what I do remember is that you can have these dark night of the soul moments that can take weeks. And then there's those which are the most brutal one, which was my last one, and probably also yours, that took over a year,
Mm-hmm.
to get over it. So those are, I don't know, but it looks like, the more steps you're going up on the evolvement ladder. Don't know any other way how to explain it. So you had multiple ego deaths and multiple dark night of the souls, but the more I have, the longer they seem to last, as in the
Mm.
impact is bigger. But on hindsight, I'm thinking maybe it's because, the biggest lessons that we need to learn are the most difficult, toughest one, and they come after the more, I want to say mellow, but there's nothing mellow about it, obviously.
I think they can all just be whatever, because my first one was actually the briefest. And then the second
Right.
one was probably somewhere in the middle, but it was the most torturous. It was
Right.
pure torture. But I also know if I hadn't been through that and I went through this last year, this would have been that torture on top
Right.
of, you know,
Right.
all the other things. So I needed that, you know, to bolster me and like build, like I am stronger now, believe it or not, somehow than I used to be. But I mean, I literally was tormented at that time. I was not only tormented by my own thoughts and feelings in life, but I was literally being tormented by whatever
Right.
spiritual beings. I mean, you could
Right.
say they were a figment of my imagination. Maybe they were. I have no idea what they were, but I know that they were tormenting me.
Right.
So, and then the last one was you know, the last one made a little bit more sense because it was real life things that were happening with me going on in my life. Again, those things could just be attributed to, well, life is kind of shitty sometimes and you can't trust people like you thought you could, and you know, everybody goes through stuff like this and you're just having a really hard time. But when you recognize that it's not just about the hard time. It's what is this setting you up for? What is this pulling you away from that was not good for you, where you shouldn't have been, where you know, who you shouldn't have been around, and whatever it was. Like, I can see that now, I guess, through a more elevated perspective. Whereas once upon a time, like if I would have gone through that in my 30s or 20s, I would have been like, you know, again, why am I being punished? Why is life so hard? This isn't fair. And now I see it as, okay, I know that this was happening for me, not to me,
Right.
though it was still hard.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I've been struggling with that big time. Is that because I was really in that victim mode mentality, but it was so brutal that I really felt like it was, I don't know, done to me is a bit big word, because it wasn't necessarily people that would do something to me, but the circumstances, the situation that would, hit me. And but at the same time, I felt like powerless. And but this is where eventually, which took a long time, I'm quite stubborn. It's actually, I realized it's all about surrender. It's like surrender to what is and surrender to the change. I have such a big problem with change in my life, change overall. And
Yeah.
yeah, those were the most brutal ones for me. And I know some people actually have a much easier job in changing, being more flexible, and others less. I'm on that last part, but it's yeah, it, you feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. I mean,
It does sound
man,
ridiculous after the fact, but when you're in the middle of it, you really feel freaking sorry for yourself.
absolutely. I mean, that's why you've been such a good friend to me because, like, you and I can just, like, you get it. You get me on that level. I almost like picture in our heads, like, literally throwing pity parties for ourselves with like party hats and stuff like that. That's something that you and I would do because we like so understand that. But
Yeah.
I think it's also, I think you and I both agree, I would say, that we believe that it's not that we almost there's an element of this where we choose it. We come
Right.
here to learn these lessons. We signed up for this. We're not just blindsided, although it feels like that here because
Yeah.
we don't have any remembrance. We don't have a direct like line to God to be like, okay, God, like what's coming next? What do I do? Like, how do I maneuver this? So we really do feel alone out here on an island. But it's also important to realize, I think, not everybody has signed up for the same amount of growth. So you might look at another person's life and think, oh, they have it so easy. Isn't it? Aren't they so lucky? You know, they hardly go through anything hard. But really, at the end of the day, when we're talking about this, you know, idea of taking a bow at the end of this play and you know even the villains are clapped for and all of that, whose story is better and who had more growth, who had more of an enriched, like, you know, I think we come here and it's intentionally hard because we're
Right.
trying to forge ourselves and we're trying to leave this planet with more growth, better perspective, a little bit stronger, a little bit more weathered and strong, whatever. So if you don't go through anything hard in this life, okay, yeah, you might live a nice cushy life, but it's basically just a vacation. And um, you know, I
Yeah.
feel like it is a lot more satisfying when you work really hard and get on the other side of something.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, now the last year, like the past year, it's been brutal for you, obviously. So how do you what do you felt about, because obviously I remember having you on the phone where you just broke down over and over and over again, which I completely understood because I've been there as well. And there were moments that you literally didn't even want to be here anymore, where I've been as well. And so I definitely understood that. I understood that feeling so profoundly. um and it was so hard to watch as well. um you know to Then you see somebody suffering like that, where you went through as well, and that you want to pull them out but you can't because you're in the middle of it. And you feel so helpless, right? In a sense, you can be an ear but you cannot, you don't want to do anything to just pull this person out. And I really get emotional about it when I think about those months. And it was months and months on end where, yeah, you yeah, you definitely got out on the other side now. But it's been it's been tough. And it was tough for me on your behalf, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you really learn, yeah, nobody can do it for you. Like you and Leyland and my mom and my sister, you guys all would have done it for me if you could have. You would have
Yeah.
literally like puppeteered my body and like lived life. You all rallied, but like at the end of the day, it is a very helpless feeling because you really can't do anything for that person going through that. I mean, you not anything. There was a lot that you guys did for me, but that feeling of I mean, that's not a feeling that I'd ever felt before in my life, because
No.
even through like my teenage years when people are mostly like sullen and uh, you have a lot of hormones coursing through your body and everything seems bleak, and you also have a very limited concept of time and how things can change. Everything seems permanent when you're young. I never
Yeah.
went through that. I was dark and I was weird and I had my emotions, but I never went through that really dark time that some people have. So to be going through that in my 40s, and not only that, but to be going through it as a mom, because that added an element of it that was, sorry, hold on. It added an element of it that was, I felt so guilty, because if
Right.
it was just me, I would have been like, I give up. I,
Yeah.
what's the point? Whatever. I think God will give me another chance. And even if he doesn't, this ain't worth it. So, but it was my son. Like, I literally didn't have a choice. So, I mean, I know that these things sound scary.
Well, yeah,
But
but at the same time, it also, I mean, it's maybe it's a good thing he was there, even though you felt guilty and everything like that. But if he wasn't there, what would have happened? That's what I'm more concerned about, because I was alone. I don't have children, and I almost went that route, right?
Mhm.
Um, and it's not like I can say, okay, I have a child, so I have to continue for this child. And I believe that's at the same time something that saved you.
Oh, it absolutely was. Like, I can't deny that. It absolutely was. But at the same time, it's like it was so good enough. How do I want to say this? It There was not any even a chance because of my son. Even though I was feeling that or whatever, it was so good enough that I really wasn't at risk of not being on this planet anymore. But of course, that was my feeling. It's just I never would have acted on it because of my son.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely, I definitely think that has helped you pull through, because there were many times that I thought, oh my God, if I just want it to be okay, I just want you to get over it. And I just want to drag you over that line at the end of it where it's over. And it was so difficult, you know, because every time you kind of climb out of that hole, and then you fall back in, and you climb out and you fall back in. It's exactly that, what I've seen and witnessed happening.
It's a it's not just I mean, it's physically on your body. You wake up and you feel it before you even remember your life. You're coming out of a dream, and even if it's a pretty neutral dream, this even before your eyes open, you feel the weight of it. And then you think to
Right.
yourself, "Oh yeah, this is what my life is." And I couldn't believe it. I kept expecting to wake up like, this is literally a nightmare. I'm going to wake up. Surely this is not happening. And again, it was one of those things where it was like the initial impact, and then it was just thing after thing after thing, and people, pulling away, and not even just like being turned against me. People have got turned against me that I never thought in a million. I'm like, I know they're smarter than that. They're like, people not only got turned against me, they lost all humanity towards me. And I was like,
Right.
how is that even possible? I can't even imagine treating somebody like that. And so again, it was like all the rugs getting pulled, and you can't even catch your breath because it's still ongoing. And every day you wake up and you think, okay, what else is going to happen? And you can't trust. I mean, even I had calls with you where I was saying to you, like, I'm afraid you're going to do that to me. I'm afraid. I'm like, I can't even trust that you're here, because
Yeah.
you're going to do it to me too. If this person can do it to me, you could do it to me.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there's nothing you could say, like you and Leyland, like there was nothing you could say. Of course you're like, we would never, but you can't believe that, when you're in it.
Right. Yeah, because you're incredibly vulnerable. It's like you're being stripped bare, right, from everything, and you're just so fragile and so vulnerable at that moment, and then comes insecurity, and you start doubting everything about yourself, because that's the existential crisis that you're going through. That is a real dark night of the soul. And I definitely know that feeling as well, in a different context possibly, but I definitely know the trust, yeah, is a really hard one, and to climb out of it as well, right, and to get it back and slowly, because now, if you look at it now, if you look back like from a year ago, right, um what do you feel has changed for you?
Mm. Well, it was a really slow process, and but at the same time, like I had my mom reminding me, like, it literally, you can't feel this way forever. It's not sustainable. Your body will kick in. Things will pass. There will come a time where you don't have that feeling, that pit in your stomach. And those moments will start happening few and far between, but they'll start happening more and more often. And then one day you will be okay. And one of the things that I've noticed is just that feeling of being okay that kind of sputtered in every once in a while felt like pure euphoria. Being in my kitchen, and just for a second, I forgot my problems and I just felt
Right.
normal. And it was like almost like being on drugs. I was like, oh my God, yes, this is so good, for just a second. And I was grateful for it, because I
Right.
knew at that time that it was a sign of things to come, that it wasn't just a one-off. I didn't just get a one moment reprieve. It was like, okay, this is possible. It is actually physically possible for my body to feel normal again. And
Yeah,
then,
that was for me where trust let me down, because those moments that you're talking about where you have a little bit of breath, I would be like, I know what's coming next, what's coming around the corner. It must be, because it's been going on for more than a year, for more than 2 years. It's been going on and on and on. So this moment of breath, just be cautious about it, because it's going to happen again. So I would be like that, right?
yes. Yes. I mean, I totally get that. And I was such a negative Nancy through this process too, just because I was like, I'm fed up. I don't, all the positive things, all that everyone was telling me about how much stronger that I was getting. And I was like, fuck all of that. I don't want to be stronger.
Well, you
Like,
don't see it at that moment either, right?
no, no. I mean, I certainly didn't feel strong. I still don't feel strong, but there is no denying that, you pluck me out of my own life 5 years ago, and none of the stuff that bothered me then I mean, I would laugh about it now because I am
Right.
stronger. Again, it's that the difference between the baby that gets its binky taken away and an 8-year-old that's like, I don't care, that you took my toy. You have more patience. So, when the longer you go through it and the more times you go through it, the more perspective you have and the more of things to come. I definitely had those dark feelings of, okay, well, I mostly do it with my mom because, when she's trying to get me to look on the bright side, it forces me to push back on her and tell her, no, it's so much worse than you could even fathom,
Right.
and really everyone can fathom it because pretty much everyone has been through it. I'm sure that there are very few people. Well, I don't know. I do look around and I see some people and I think, oh, you sweet soul, you are not necessarily here for
Mhm.
this. There are some people that I think will never go through this in their lifetime.
You think? Yeah, possibly. Indeed.
And
I look at people and then I think, yeah, they so cannot relate to what I'm going through. And that's where the loneliness comes in, right? Because when you're deep down in that dark hole, and you see people that just having a normal life or a little crisis here and there, but that's where the loneliness comes in, that you feel you're totally alone with it. And I guess this is where the luck came in, that we had each other in a sense, although you were not around when I was in Mexico and having my giant crisis, but afterwards when I had my dips again, when you were in the middle of it as well, we kind of could relate to each other at least. But
yeah,
what I do notice is, how you said in the beginning, like, yeah, the first one was kind of short and fine. And I remember those where all of a sudden I could remember, hey, 3 weeks ago I was in a total crisis and now I'm out of it. Like you just climbed out of it. But this last one, this long one, it feels like you crawl out of it so slowly that
right.
you can't see the moment that you actually like on the verge of being out of it, right? Until you do. And I mean, it's been months ago that I look back and I think, oh wow, I came along, I came really far, and but it went so agonizingly slow that
Yeah.
I still have to pinch myself. Am I not still in there? And certainly I am for a part, but and you too, but it's not even nearly as it was like a year ago.
I mean, I think of when I first met you and my concept of you and like how we interacted, whatever. You have changed so much in all beautiful ways. Every single, I mean, like,
Really?
yes,
I don't even see that.
you don't. Oh my God.
No.
Just this, I mean, you were so, I mean, you're going to talk about your experience next episode, so I don't want to go too much in it, but like so many milestones that you have broken through, just absolutely.
True. Yeah.
I mean, literally, it's inspirational. But just your spirit, your soul, who you are as a person, and how you conduct yourself, your energy, the way you speak about things. I mean, we both, I think, were a lot more surface level at that time. Um, I mean, I kind of laugh about the two of us and how our friendship started and who those two girls were back then. It's kind of
Yeah.
hysterical.
Well, we used to laugh about stuff like, oh my gosh, the political, the world stage, etc. Ooh,
Right.
terrible year and this and that. But now we had to go through our own shit, right?
Right.
So that's a whole different level.
It was like, this is not cute anymore. I want off this ride. But I mean, look at us now. We're obviously still working on things, and nobody's ever done with the process. Like you'll die at some point.
Well, yeah, but you know what? You're laughing again because I remember
Oh
last
yeah,
year around this time, I thought, oh my God, I'm never going to see her laugh again. And you
yeah,
weren't. I mean, you were dragging yourself over the floor in agonizing pain. And um, although it was a physical pain, it was emotionally, mentally, um, and obviously, like I said before, I've been there as well. So, but it's if I look at you now, I'm like, wow, you grew a lot as well from last year. I mean, holy moly. No, what even 6 months ago, you were still in the middle, kind of in the middle of it.
yes, yeah. I was. It was a very slow process, but to you and I both, humor is very important. It's very much a part of both of our personalities,
Yeah.
really more than a lot of people. So, I remember it occurring to me, I don't think I'll ever be funny again. I don't think I'll ever be able to crack a joke. I don't think, there were a couple times that we'd be on the phone and I would catch myself laughing at something and I was like, wow. And I would take a moment and be like, I can't believe I just laughed.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and so that was like a reawakening of the parts of yourself that are coming back. They're always there. They really are, but they are dormant while you go through this very dark time. And the good
True.
things will stick with you and the bad things will, well, I don't want to call it good and bad, but the things that don't serve you will fall away.
Right.
I'm still working on that though. I still am working on feeling like I have a sense of humor. And even there are things, I spend my days on X a lot of the time because I'm looking for things to talk about or whatever. I'm still in this, I'm still in this
Right.
awakening, whatever. So I want to know what's going on in the world and what people are talking about. There's so many times, multiple times every single day that I come across something and I have this funny thought and I want to tweet it and I stop myself. And there's something
Right.
in me that's like, I feel too vulnerable. And part of that comes
Yeah.
from knowing that there are people out there like criticizing me behind that hate everything about you and everything you do, they are talking crap about.
Yeah, that's like I totally understand that because today is my first day after almost 2 years that I haven't streamed again. And I was really nervous about it because, well,
Yeah.
thankfully I have you, but if I would be on my own, I would be like, oh my God. But um I never thought I would come back at all. And but you too. I remember you saying I don't want to come back. But and just like you say, when you want to say something funny, you think three times before you do it. Whereas before you would just throw it out and it would be fun and no care in the world. But it's interesting how much of an impact such it's kind of a trauma, that whole dark night of the soul as well, because it has such an impact on how you express yourself afterwards. So now that you have to think three times before, and what's the reason really that you don't do it? Because, well, you're afraid of being judged. You're afraid of, well, you know, am I still come across as funny or whatnot? But because it's, you're going to think it through instead of that it comes from you spontaneously, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a part of my sense of humor that was very like kind of cutting. And, I always like to say how I love to troll, the elite on Twitter. That's my origin story. And I had so much fun doing that. But yeah, after I went through all of this, it softens you. And it made me like, I used to be kind of a brat in my sense of humor. And this is not that new. I mean, it's been years now. I'm a lot more careful. I don't call people names. Um I
Yes.
don't pick on people for things that they can't control about themselves. I'll pick on people all day long for, the dumb stuff that they do or not having integrity or, just being a lousy person in general. But things that people can't change about themselves, their looks, whatever, I don't make those digs. You'll never find me making those digs at people. And that's all part of a, a a spiritual growth of realizing how nasty that was.
Yes, I definitely, oh my gosh, I can so relate to that as well because, it's that um, yeah, you feel, I used to be with the liberals, we would just troll them and just go after them and this and that. But I've softened so much on that side because now I'm like, wait a minute, what if somebody talks to me like that? Would I be hurt as well? And now recently there was this girl from Save a Fox. She's 30 years. She committed suicide because she got cyberbullied
Oh,
and
yeah.
like badly. And she was autistic, had borderline as well. And but there were like 3 million people that actually cheer for her because that's how many people followers she has on YouTube. And yet those few people that were nasty to her for over a year, those were the one pushing her over the edge.
Mm.
And I mean, I'm always crying if I think about it because, you know, I realize that myself as well when somebody can just make a nasty comment and it can really hurt you, whereas 50 other people can be nice to you, and yet we tend to then choose that one person that was negative and focus on that. And um It just, because you're in that vulnerable state, right? And it hurts you. And so that thing that made me so much softer, because I'm thinking, I don't know what somebody is going through. I don't care whether they, what you would call a liberal or not. But
Right.
at the end of the day, we all have feelings. It doesn't matter. Nobody is above somebody else. And yeah, I
You'll
definitely
know it.
stopped doing this.
Yeah, and you'll know it too by the way you feel afterwards. I would have those exchanges with liberals online, and I would feel, whatever in the moment. And then you're done, and you feel hollowed out, and you feel there's this darkness that you feel afterwards once you start getting in tune with it. I think the higher you vibrate, which again I think is part of, it's kind of a byproduct of going through the dark night of the soul afterwards, like you're kind of humming a little bit in a different frequency. Anything that is not of that frequency now is very, very apparent to you. Like it's kind of like I didn't eat McDonald's for 10 years, and then all of a sudden I had McDonald's one day because I had family in town and that was just what we were eating, and I didn't want to be rude. I literally felt like I took a depressant. I felt like I felt mentally, physically, and spiritually ill. And I was like, I used to eat McDonald's all the time and I never
Right.
was able to differentiate. But because I haven't had it for so long, there was definitely an obvious change in the way that I felt. That is now how I also feel about, online exchanges. People say all kinds of things. You come in contact with all these energies, especially when you're online. And there are those moments when I'm like, like my feathers get ruffled and I want to see something. I'm like, oh God, I got the perfect thing to say. But I've learned to pump the brakes, and I will always be like, take a breath. Okay,
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, but can you, blah, blah, blah. And I feel so much better as long as I never let myself get to that point that really none of us should ever get from. And not only that, it's so much more well received. You
Right.
will actually find that people be like, oh, actually, that's an interesting thing. If you're being combative with somebody, if
Right.
you're calling them names, if you're being snarky, if you're being condescending, you will never reach another person's heart or mind.
Right. Yes, I definitely was in a lot of anger as well. And I would just take it out on everybody online. But at the same time, now when I think about it, and I'm like, well, you know what? I could be on the receiving end of that. How would I feel about it? Right. And now sometimes I still fall off in that trap, but then I actually delete my comment because, like you said, you find yourself at the end feeling
Yes.
hollow. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't feel good at all. I'm going to delete this comment. Right. And I do, but that's my way of practicing to get better with myself and with others. By the way, hi, Angel. Good to see you, Angela. I'm glad that you're here.
I was just noticing a couple different comments in different chats. One was Divine Rod 555 says this show topic is appreciated, that divine timing feel. And then Lion Dog 17 on Pilled was saying, I'm hearing this at the perfect time. That I think is such a thread with this. Like things will pop into when you kind of let yourself go, let go, let God, and you let yourself go, and you allow, instead of trying to fight it, you allow it to happen. Everything will pop up in the perfect time. You will find the right people, you will find the right messages. I was getting recommendation for books like at the exact right time, all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That's a very important one. The synchronicities that you encounter, but you need to be willing to hear them as well,
Yeah.
because especially when you go through that dark period, you tend to, I remember you had a period like that. It didn't matter what we said to you. It was like, fuck off. I don't want to know. I'm in my misery right now. And we've
Absolutely.
all been there, but and it was so painful for me as well to see that and witness that, because you want your friend to get out on the other side. We all want that for our loved ones. And yeah, I wonder how you're feeling now when you look back. I obviously asked you that question before, but um, yeah, if you look upon it now, as in where you stand compared to last year,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, definitely the feelings have changed as far as I don't have that weight of darkness on my shoulders physically. I'm still in the process very much, especially because a lot of it has to do with external circumstances and I'm still in the thick of it. My external
right,
my external circumstances have not changed yet. They have not risen to meet me yet, like to be like, okay, you got through that one. Like, in fact, in some ways, I'm just getting started with dealing with
Right.
my external circumstances. But I mean, obviously, I'm a different human being than I was even a year ago. I mean, my I feel more myself again. I feel uh especially when I do my shows, when I'm talking to you, when, in these moments that I can kind of come alive again, these are my best moments.
Yeah.
And when I'm with my son. Although I will say, he has had a lot of it's affected him too. I've done my best to keep these things from him his entire life, but he's older now. He's 10 years old and he's very observant. And he knows, and I can tell he's very protective of me
Right.
and concerned for me, worried about me, which breaks my heart. And I really try to do my best to be like, it's okay, it's going to be okay. But I also want to teach him, because I was talking to my mom about this and telling her that I feel guilty about it. And she's like, no, it's okay for him to see you go through this, because when
Yes.
you get out the other end, the lesson is you can go through hard times and there's always a light at the end of the tunnel and you will get through this. If he was just like padded in a room his whole life and never saw suffering, it's like Siddhartha, the Buddha.
Right.
He didn't see suffering. So the first time he saw suffering and death, he was like, it was just mind exploding for him, because he was like, I didn't even know
Right.
this existed. So it is good for him. Although, I mean, I remember kind of what that was like to be a kid and to feel worried about things that were out of your control and to feel like people aren't really being honest with you. You don't really even know what's going on. He knows a little bit of what's going on. He actually knows a lot about what's going on now. And we've had some really good talks with it. And man, for a 10-year-old, he is just like this little, I just can't even describe. He's able to just say these things that are so profound.
Yes.
But he's still a kid, and I don't ever want him to hurt or suffer or be worried or think that he has to take care of me, because that is so backwards.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. And I love the perspective children can have sometimes, because they can absolutely sober you up from wherever you're in,
Yeah.
but also be very empathic. And,
Yes.
you know, so yeah, Angel is saying this is a time where empathic women are challenged to take care of ourselves first, be kind to ourselves in a way where we don't judge ourselves anymore. Huge step in reclaiming who we really are. I agree with that as well. And I think that counts for men as well, although
Yeah.
they're still trying to find their ground more than, I guess we as women went through it for a longer period of time, because I guess we're more sensitive. So yeah, we go through it brutally, um and maybe that's so that we can just help also men that go through it in a
Hmm.
way to carry their burdens, or but even be empathic about it. It's like, um yeah, we're all humans after all, whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Well, men do tend to internalize things more, which I have to imagine that makes it a lot harder, because for
Yes.
myself, that's been my saving grace, that I can just, if I felt like I had to put on a facade when I went out in the world, even with my friends and family, oh my God, I couldn't handle that. It was
Yeah.
only by being completely broken, raw, real, authentic, truthful, ugly, disgusting, whatever it was with you guys, that I was able to get through it. So,
Right.
Pammy over on YouTube says, was talking about feeling like I haven't figured out what my purpose in life is. And
Yeah.
yeah. And again, I think it was kind of like Patricia and I are saying, that it presents itself to you if you just kind of give into it and you follow those signs and the synchronicities and those little clues. If you don't pay attention to them, maybe they go away, or maybe you just lose them. But you have to be a willing participant and don't try to steer it. I think that's when it comes the easiest.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to that one, because I've been struggling with that in the past year a lot. So the loss of meaning or purpose, the things that once gave you purpose, which may be religion, career, relationship, your passions, hobbies, suddenly feel hollow and meaningless. So
Mm.
life starts feeling like an empty routine and nothing excites you anymore. um, you used to wake up excited about life, and now you feel like an NPC in a glitchy situation. That's how it's described here. But um, what I think this is about is finding a new purpose in life, your true purpose in life, because we can do all sorts of things that we think is, that used to be our passion, only to find that maybe we were watching in a the wrong direction, and there is something lying behind that rebirth that you have to go through, where you
Yeah.
will find your actual purpose, right?
Right. We're such a mixture of our own inner world and the influence of external. We can't help it when you grow up in a family, you always have a role in that family. And even if you have a very small family, or even if you whatever it is, that perception of you and who you are and how you fit into the world is very much developed when you're a child, whether it is real or not, whether it's honest or not, it's ingrained in you. A light
Right.
in the matrix says, if you know the truth about yourself, words of others have zero impact because they're lies. Don't let them have power over you. Exactly. But
Right.
that's so hard to do because, well, at least for me, because the whole thing about the shadow side is that the shadow side develops when there are things about you and your personality that you learn are not good, not right, things that you should be ashamed of, things that you should, hammer down. Like, for example, if you grow up in a household, let's say you're a little girl and you're very opinionated and you speak your mind, but you grow up in a household where it's like, well, little girls should be seen and not heard, or you get pummeled by it for it, or whatever it is, and you learn that you need to be quiet. That part of yourself now gets incorporated into your shadow side. This is a part of you that you are stifling in
Right.
order. It's what it is it's a mechanism that helps us survive in the world. This is a part of our brain that says, okay, if we reflect these parts of our personality outwardly, then the world will reject us. We will have no food, we will have no shelter, we will have no protection, and we will die. So we
Right.
learn this time. So the whole thing with the Carl Jung was not to look at that side of ourselves as gross or something that we need to hide, but to actually work with it and to incorporate it back into our whole self.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, Angel says in the YouTube, key in overcoming the dark night of the soul is to just be and do who you are. Remember that, Keystone. Yeah, it's all about remembering who you are. But then, if you have an existential crisis, you literally don't even know who you are anymore. And
Mhm.
I guess we all need to go through that period of time in order to learn. And some actually, like Angel, she's a quick learner because, she just, the way that she does it is freaking amazing. And she's like, yeah, okay, I'm struggling with that. Let's just feel it. Right. And I would just run for my feelings as hard as I could. And yeah, she taught me a lot too. And I'm definitely very grateful for her.
It's good to have those
Yeah.
different perspectives that come into your life. It's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. You meet these different characters and they have these different
Yeah.
aspects about them. And one's going to teach you how to have a brain and one's going to teach you how to have a heart. So you
Right.
will meet those. It's a quest. I always
Right.
think about that stupid gift that you always send me.
Yes. Yes, so we sent you, let's go on a quest
Are you
with a
ready
lot
for
of
your
blue
quest?
Yeah,
Oh, I hate
yes.
it, but I love it.
Angel meant, do who you are. Like, if you're sad, be sad. If you're angry, be angry. Don't fight with yourself. That's it. I'm so good at fighting myself
Yeah.
constantly. But was also based on fear, anxiety. Because well, we're gonna go into that next week. In the meantime, I actually found that clip that I was talking about, the meme clip. I don't know if I can play that right now.
Yeah, how are you gonna do? Can you upload it, or are we gonna
I
share your
did.
screen?
I did. Hang on, here it is. Okay, let's go.
Oh, thank you, little roots. Please stay strong. What in the hell was that all about?
Yeah.
It do be like that, don't it?
Yes, I found that at the time that I was also in that deep hole, and I was like cracking up because I definitely knew what he was feeling.
Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on one second. Let me open this and hopefully it does that. I'm 8-bit gamer. I just opened the link. I'm just trying to make it not have. He's challenging my mom to something, so I'm not sure what this is. Maybe this is just a private thing between them. I'm not going to play the clip, but anyway, thank you so much. That clip is perfect because you cannot ever just relax. You just know that it's coming. But it's kind of like when you're, even now, as things are starting to feel a little bit better, I'm like, do I trust this? You know, I'm still bracing for whatever is to come. But there is a part of me that now just feels really ready for whatever it is. And that is why it is so important. Just like the example of not talking smack to people on Twitter is a very, very small example of what it means in life to make sure that you are operating in full integrity all the time. You're going to mess up, but the less you mess up and the more that you're honest and you are kind and you are patient and all of those different virtues, as much as you can live in those, you are setting yourself up because as soon as here's another thing. I think that before you have these experiences, you tend to get away with more, let's say.
Right.
Seemingly in life, you know, you could you could be a total asshole and you seem to get away with it and you're like, okay, whatever. When you start leveling up, let's say, I do think you get away with less, but that's a good thing. You don't want to get away with stuff because you want to be forced to clean it up.
Well, that's it. It's incredibly humbling, right? This experience. You know, it's yeah, I definitely have had that I thought twice before. Yeah, I was so impulsive and I would react. I'm very reactive, right? And I cut that off so much, like by 80%. I still have some of that in me, obviously, naturally, but I will get rid of it because eventually it is always gonna, I do believe it's some type of a karma as well. The more you do it, the more it comes back to you.
Right.
Yeah, and that clip, it should have been our intro.
I know.
That's perfect.
That's a good point. What are you growling at, sir? Can I help you?
Oh, is that Archie?
Yeah, he's on my bed.
And that little furry ball.
He's like, he has this one mat on his ear. So like the fur. Oh, hold on. Let me just go see really fast what he's growling for.
He's so cute. I see you, Joel. Good to see you there in my chat.
Here. What do you need? What do you want? I don't even think you know. What is it?
Yes, Angel, that would be a great intro. I wish I had just the video, but I don't. I got it from Instagram, and yeah, it had me in tears laughing when I saw it. I'm like, there's no better way to describe the Dark Night of the Soul like that clip, right?
Yes. Oh God, I love it. Well, I think, let's see. I think we can kind of wrap it up here. Next week, we're going to be going through your experience in more detail. And it's a really good one. I hope you guys will tune in for that. And then we're going to start having people on. So if you also have an experience, you want to reach out to one of us and perhaps come on the show and talk to us about it. We already have some friends lined up that are going to be coming on the shows that have really incredible experiences without as well. And the
Right.
more stories we get, I think the more kind of obviously different stories, but the more I think the picture gets painted that so much of this is the same when people go through it.
Right. Yeah. Also, men, please, but don't shy away from coming on to tell your story. I know there's also a lot of grief related stuff. There is a lot of oh my God, it's endless, right? So I do believe it will help anybody that watches the show as well if you tell your story, because I used to think I would be afraid to actually talk about anything regarding, because I thought I was the only one, right, going through it. Now I know that's not the case, and I'm not backing down anymore on my own story, because um, I think it can help a lot of people, and just like with your story, it can help people, right?
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
That's why we
Absolutely.
made this show, right?
Yeah, definitely this was like a no-brainer for you and I to do this show together.
Right.
Will you guys do me a favor, please, wherever you are watching? I know we're streaming to a million places right now. Will you just like and subscribe, follow, whatever it is? And that really helps us out. We're just getting started with this, and we'll be back every single Wednesday at the same exact time, noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, whatever time Patricia is in on her star in the nebula in her time zone.
Yeah. And maybe you want to talk about your CBD and stuff, because I have all the links in my videos as well.
Oh, thanks. Well, CBD and More is the product that really helped me through everything. When I went through my experience, I finally got off my antidepressants, which was massive for me. And I had been on Lexapro. I was very depressed. And so I had heard about CBD as a product to help you with the brain zaps. And so I started taking it. Again, the things that come into your life when they are supposed to. I literally went to a conference with my sister and I met Joel, who owns this company. He had a booth at the conference and I talked to him, and for what he gave me some to try out. And I had been living with chronic back pain at that time from a car accident that I had been in years and years ago. And as I was talking to him, he was like, "So how's your back pain?" And I was like, "Oh my God, it's gone." So then I was just sold on it. I bought a bottle of it. I started taking it. The brain zaps went away, and then I just continued taking it. And
Yeah,
it's
you
done
helped
really.
me with it at the time when I got off my antidepressants and I had the brain saps. I was at that last bit where I had to let go, and you said CBD, and I actually
Yes,
bought, obviously not that brand, but I had
right.
another one. But holy moly, it really worked for me.
Right. So, I mean, and this isn't just CBD. It's made with moringa oil. The process of it, I mean, he's basically Nikola Tesla when he's creating this product. You should see the setup, and every single detail is quality and really thought about, and it's just wonderful. So anyway, go to cbdandmore.com for CBD. They also sell just the pure moringa, which is wonderful for your skin and all kinds of things. And then also tulip blooms. There's a link below. Our friend Patrick, he's got a million, or not a million, but he's got some really great products on that website that they make themselves in-house, and he's a stickler for ingredients just like I am. He's really big on getting rid of the toxicity in the products that we use, especially body lotion, which is going all over the place and getting in your bloodstream. So go check that out. Use promo code Kate, and the links are below.
Yeah,
And
also in my channels.
okay, thank you so much. I can actually play an outro song, but I'm going to remove our YouTubes